What is up, FA Nation? Happy Wednesday, the day after Tuesday, the day before Thursday. We have a 9-game slate here for this Wednesday evening. John and Pemba with the man on the playbook tonight. John, how you feeling about tonight's slate? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, you know what? Tonight's slate, I'm a big fan of what we got going on. So a lot of interesting matchups that I think that are going to be pretty popular in terms of game stacking. A couple of games here are nearly 240 and over for total. Sacramento and Indiana is at 239.5. Memphis and Minnesota is at 237.5. And of course, we have the Wizards and the Bucks, 243. But right as we jumped on air, we found out that Chris Middleton is doubtful to play tonight, which I actually kind of, I wasn't worried about a blowout. It was only a 4-point spread, but I like it a little bit more. It makes it feel like that game's going to be even more competitive if Milwaukee's without one of their big dogs. So all those games are jumping off the map to me today in terms of stack, but it's a pretty good slate for the size.
I mean, Washington's been pretty competitive with everyone lately, right? I mean, regardless whether the team has been elite or not, 8-2 of the last 10 games, currently in a playoff position.
Yeah, they're a playoff team. So, I mean,
Let's jump into your NBA DFS playbook for today, John. Again, 9 games. You broke it all down. Starting at the point guard position, as always, we will go position by position. We have none other than Russell Westbrook. The question isn't whether or not if he's the top point guard of the slate, John, because he is. Let's just get that out of the way. Is he the top overall play tonight? And if not, who are you leaning ahead of Russ?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's very hard to not want to have Westbrook as your top player, right? Now, this game for me has the two options. Yep. It's Giannis and it's Westbrook. Those are for me 1A, 1B. It's them, and then it's a bunch of nothing, and then it's like the next thing. One, because it's the matchup. It's the 240 game total. Two, they're both playing out of their minds right now. We've got back-to-back 70 fantasy point games out of Russ. We're looking at the draft forecaster here. He's expected to be one of the highest rostered players of the slate. So, we don't fade Russell Westbrook. We don't want to fade Russell Westbrook in these matchups. And if he's going to be chalk, you don't want to fade him because if he's dropping 75 fantasy points and you don't have him, you're probably playing from behind. So he's expensive, but there's enough value on this slate tonight to get him in your lines.
Well, if we're plugging Westbrook in over 11K on both DraftKings and FanDuel, we're going to have to find some value, especially on sites like FanDuel where you're using 2 point guard. So where else are we looking at the point guard tier? I see some interesting names here in the mid tier in John Morant against Minnesota and Derrick Rose against Denver. Talk to me about those two guys specifically and what formats you like using them in.
Yeah, I mean, so for Morant, it's more so just like a tournament pivot. Just being the matchup against Minnesota, we know that he's had 50, 60 fantasy point ceilings this season. He's just been incredibly inconsistent. So that's the bigger issue for me. But if you look on FanDuel at a $7,000 price tag, again, we're sort of projecting him to be, sort of that number 2 guard on the slate. So for in that mid tier. Now, I don't necessarily know if I'm going there outside of being contrarian today in lineups. I like Drew Holiday a lot more now, knowing that Middleton's going to be out. I think, he could absorb a lot of that usage. He was already performing well. And he gets that matchup against the Wizards, and we're looking to game stack. And then if we're going below, you mentioned Derrick Rose. He sort of turned back the clock. He's got 20 actual points in 5 of the last 8 games while playing nearly 30 minutes. So he's looking really good. He gets Denver. But truthfully, I think everybody's just going to play DeLon Wright tonight against the Pacers. 52 and 5,600. He had a 60 fantasy point night last night. He had 4 blocks in that game. He's not going to get 4 blocks.
And 4 steals.
And 4 steals, right. I can see him being a guard and getting steals. That's not going to be too shocking if he was to have another 4 steal game. I don't see 4 blocks happening again, but that's 12 fantasy points you take away. He still goes for 50. So, DeLon Wright at his price tag in this matchup against the Pacers, I think a lot of people are going to go Russ, Wright, and move on.
Yeah, especially in cash, that is the lock and load duo at point guard. Let's shift our focus over to shooting guard, where Bradley Beal tops the list, at least in terms of pricing. There's a couple guys over 8K. We'll just go through them. Beal, Sexton, Levert, primarily, I think the three. Do you have a preference in that tier? I mean, listen, I want you to choose your words carefully because every time that you tout Colin Sexton, things go very poorly for everyone using him. Is Colin Sexton the top dog in that tier?
I'm not going to confirm or deny my feelings for Colin Sexton because, I do believe in, superstitions as, Justin Fensterman found out on Monday on the Alarm After Hours show. So I don't want to jinx it, but let's just say if there were scenarios where a person could be successful, that scenario may be playing out tonight with the team that plays basketball in Cleveland with their particular point guard. So potentially that's an option. If Brogdon's out, I'm still going back to LeVert. He's been a stud. He gets Sacramento. And then, of course, if Norman Powell doesn't end up playing, he's questionable tonight. We're still getting McCollum cheaper than both. Right. And he gets Cleveland. So I'm a big fan of those guys. Still love Beal again. That matchup, we've seen him score 30 actual numerous times while Russ is still going out there giving us triple doubles. So I don't really have a problem. I mean, shooting guard is really stacked for me in that sort of upper tier. Mid tier, there's D'Angelo Russell. I don't really think we need to necessarily go there. I'm more intrigued now with Dante D Vincenzo with Middleton out. He had a double-double the other day. He's $5,100 and $4,600 on DraftKings and FanDuel. Another guy that's going to sort of absorb some of that available usage. And he's not like a tremendous offensive player, but he's a guy that gives you everything else. And so double-digit rebounds. He can give you steals, blocks. He can give you some assists. If he scores double-figure points, and he could give you, 8x at this price point. So, for me, if I'm not spending up, I'm looking at Dante DiVincenzo, and then I'm looking at Terrence Davis, who at $3,800 and $4,400, I think is sort of your runaway value play for tonight. He's getting more minutes with all the injuries that they have. They were Halliburton and Fox now out of the lineup. I think a lot of people will be looking at Davis. And then someone who didn't make the playbook, and I'll probably end up adding in there once we're done with this, is Aaron Nesmith. Knowing that there's no Jaylen Brown tonight, now we find out that Romeo Langford also is unlikely to play. You look at the recent performances out of Nesmith, he's looked good. If there was ever a matchup for him to succeed in, it would be against Orlando. If for whatever reason Boston ends up in a blowout here, Nesmith will still stay on the floor. So I think Nesmith is an interesting option as well.
Just for those playing on DraftKings, interesting lineup note for Nesmith, small forward eligible only over on DraftKings. So let's shift over to that small forward position. And I must ask, Sean, how many Kings is too many Kings? Because Buddy Hield marks number 3, but let me tell you, they've all been really good.
He's been fantastic. I mean,
how many would you play in one lineup? And is Hield a top priority amongst the Kings?
I mean, the way it's not only just his scoring, but you look at his rebounds and his assists lately. I mean, that's what's jumping out to me. The fact that he's giving you basically 4 levels of production, chipping in with some defensive stats as well, is what's really been impressive for me for Buddy Hield, because we always knew he was a scorer, but that was largely it. But he's being asked to take on more of a role, with missing guys like Harrison Barnes and Halliburton and Fox, and he's really excelled. So becoming more of a complete player. So I definitely like Buddy Hield. I think he's a better potential option on DraftKings because you do get the bonus points for the 3-pointers. And we know that he's an outside shooter there. He's also $7,700 there. So he's kind of wedged in between 2 guys I also really like. Michael Porter, of course, right? I know it's the Knicks, so that matchup kind of downgrades players a lot, but he continues to be fantastic. And then Anthony Edwards, doesn't even matter that D'Angelo Russell is playing all these minutes and playing as well as he is, because his last 5 games here, 45, 36, 44, 30, and 52 fantasy points here for Anthony Edwards. So small forward stack. Again, it's another really loaded position. You have those guys at the top. We almost had to decide if we wanted Middleton there. Luckily, he's likely not going to play. But then you have R.J. Barrett, you got Joe Ingles, you got Cedi Osman, who's playing because they're down guys. So a lot of options at small forward today. I really don't think you can go wrong. I think it's more of a price preference, whoever fits the bill. But I mean, I just think it's a very strong and deep position tonight.
Well, I think there is maybe a position we could possibly go wrong, and it's what to do with Giannis versus Sabonis. And I guess that's not generally a question we'd ask ourselves until you look at Domantas Sabonis' recent production. 70 plus fantasy points in 2 straight games. So I have to ask, John, if you can only spend up on one, you have 10-9 left and a power forward position to go. I mean, would it be Giannis or would it be Sabonis based on recent form? And I'll even go a step further and say Malcolm Brogdon gets ruled out in this scenario.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, if Brogdon's in, I would downgrade Sabonis. So it's a good qualifier you put there. But in 2 games against the Wizards this year, Giannis is averaging 73.5 fantasy points.
Is that good?
Some would say.
Okay.
Some would say those are elite numbers. Yeah. So it's Giannis for me, number one. Listen, if you're playing on a FanDuel, right, and you just can't fit Giannis in, for $1,100 cheaper, if Brogdon's out, Sabonis is giving you back-to-back 70 fantasy point games. So
and gets the Kings. And now gets the Kings.
It's against the Kings. Bagley's back, but okay, Holmes. I would have no problem if Sabonis is in your lineup over Giannis on FanDuel because you needed that $1,100. But it's a $300 difference on DraftKings. I just have to play Giannis. There's just, the matchup is too elite. It's a 240 total. It's the Wizards. Yeah, his current form. There's no Middleton now. A lot of things are just lining up for Giannis. Like I said, if there was one thing maybe going against him tonight, it would be the fact that it's a back-to-back for them, right? Then they played. I think they played last night, didn't they? Against. So that would be my lone hesitation if there is anything with Giannis is the fact that he played 37 minutes last night against the Nets. If you worry about back-to-backs on certain players, tired legs this late in the year, all of those things could be a factor. But the price difference between them two on DraftKings just makes me lean Giannis a little bit more.
Let's talk about the value tier where we have some very interesting options. Mo Wagner being one of them. And then Kenyon Martin Jr., I think, also stands out just with how depleted Houston is. Yeah. Do we have a lean between those two? I mean, there's a significant price difference over on DraftKings, not much of a price difference on FanDuel.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to go with Martin. I mean, he's been playing well, and even though it's a very, very, very tough matchup for him tonight against the Sixers, who else do they have? There's no DJ Wilson, there's no Jayshawn Tate, Christian Wood is doubtful to play. He's probably looking at 40 minutes tonight at the front. They just don't have front court players. They're out of him. So, unless he fouls out, I think he's just going to fall his way into a 5x return, especially over on DraftKings. Like you said, at 3,900, he's $1,000 cheaper than Mo Wagner. Wagner against Boston on FanDuel, maybe, there's a little bit of a revenge factor. James, think about it this way. The Celtics traded Daniel Tice and got Luke Cornett and Mo Wagner back, and then decided when they wanted to sign Jabari Parker, it was Mo Wagner that was leaving. It wasn't even Luke Cornett. Right. So, and Parker is not even in the rotation anymore. They got healthy. He's got 3 straight DNPs. So, they just did not like what they saw there. Maybe it was an easier cut. I have no idea. So if there was ever a chance or an opportunity for Wagner to sort of stick it to somebody, maybe this would be the opportunity. He looked good the other day. He's been getting the extended run. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm leaning Martin just due to the lack of availability with Houston tonight.
Whoever saw that Jabari Parker DMP coming? It's crazy.
He looked good, but they don't need him. So,
let's finish this thing off at the center position where, look, we love Jokic. You suddenly love Jokic, but is there a need to play Jokic tonight? Just considering. I mean, Westbrook and Giannis and Sabonis on the slate.
Yeah, I said earlier when we were talking with you, me, and Justin Fensterman discussing the slate, I had Jokic as my 4. Assuming Brogdon was out, I had him behind Sabonis, Westbrook, and Giannis. I don't think center's the spot you need to pay up because I think there's 2 very, very good mid-tier options tonight, and Robert Williams and Mo Bamba. Wendell Carter's questionable play with an eye injury, and Tristan Thompson's already been ruled out. So, why spend $10K on Jokic if you can spend $5K on either of those two and play Giannis or Westbrook? So it's not that I don't think Jokic is a bad play. It is the Knicks. Centers against the Knicks have just dominated them all season long. Nerlens Noel is expected to play tonight, so it's not old man Taj at center. But still, Jokic isn't going to have problems. He's just as likely to throw up 70 as anybody else. I just don't think it's a position you need to go to, given where I think the upside lies with the two cheaper plays. And then in the mid tiers, our guy Jonas Valanciunas, in 2 matchups against Minnesota this year, he's averaging 43 fantasy points over 26 minutes. Brandon Clark has been a DNP in 2 straight games, with Jared Jackson is out tonight, so I would anticipate Clark being back in the lineup. But I mean, Valanciunas should still play over 30 minutes against Towns here. So if you want to spend a mid-tier play, I have Valanciunas more as a cash game guy. I got Rob Williams and Mo Bamba in my GPPs, and Jokic is just the every format play. But again, I just don't think there's going to be a lot of ownership there.
John, that is the NBA DFS playbook. Any final thoughts before we skedaddle here?
Yeah, we'll have the core plays out momentarily. Be on the lookout for any other injury news. James, it is the end of the NBA season, right? This is what we talk about all the time. Like, weird guys become valuable, late stretches happen, players get rested. So make sure you're tuned in, locked in right before roster lock.
Yeah, I mean, especially as the season wears down. So I completely agree, John. Big shout out to Matt Sells, the producer for today, and we'll be back again tomorrow with another live stream and full day of content.